Good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Urbana Community Development Commission. And I'll start by calling the meeting to order. We're now in order. Next, we'll have roll call.
Fred Cobb,
Here.
Janice Bankston,
Here.
Chris Diana,
Here.
George Francis, Gregory Hayes, Jerry Moreland,
Here.
Brad Roof,
Here.
Ann Silvis.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we'll consider the minutes from our last meeting, which was November 27th, 2012. So we'll take a couple of minutes, not too many minutes, to review those. Okay, if everyone has had a chance to review the minutes, I'll entertain a motion for approval or corrections.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Okay. Yeah, we have a motion and a second to correct to approve the minutes as written. Are there any comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it. And the minutes are approved as written. And next we have petitions and communications. This is the part of the meeting where those of you who are here tonight, who are not part of the commission, have a chance to bring up anything you would like to bring up that's not on our agenda for this evening. So if you have something that is not on our agenda, now's the time to bring it up. Just identify yourself. Anyone have anything?
Yes, I'm Bishop King James Underwood, 1309 West Tremont Street in Urbana, and we would like to make a request, if possible, that if there's any grants that we could get a grant to help us to deal with our infrastructure and help getting our infrastructure in Dr. Ellis back up to par, because right now we're having problems because the tile that's used in tree roots is causing a lot of problems, and we need something to get it back on course.
Can you give us some specifics, examples of problems?
For example, one of the problems we have is that our lateral main is on the north side of the street. We're on the south side of the street. And when we have to hook up to the lateral main, what happens is we have to go under the street, and if anything happens on our side of the street, we have to tear up the street and then go in the other neighbor's yard and tear up their yard and replace whatever we have to tear up, and then replace the street. And we think it's unfair. We think that if we could get funds, we could have them put lateral main on the south side of the street, so we won't have to go across the street, and then it would be easy for them to do it rather than put it in the center of the street. But if they put it in the center of the street, then it will be equal access to the main. But as it is now, we don't have equal access to the main. And if anything happened on the other side, we have to tear up the street and all that in order to repair.
Okay, it sounds like a problem for people on the wrong side of the street.
Yes. And we are on the wrong side of the street.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what can be done except to mention that to the city.
We already dealing with the
You-
city
you-
on.
You mentioned it to the city already?
Yes, and
Okay. So
we're
you'd like a
still
little,
having problems with dealing with the situation,
you'd like support from the commission?
so they need money.
Mhm. Okay, Connie, not Connie, Kelly, what would be the appropriate way to possibly get some funds?
Is this a residential building? These residential?
No, it's not a building, it's a community.
It's a
Dr.
community.
Ellis subdivision.
But, okay, offhand, I'm thinking of like the grants that we have, and I don't think that those apply. That doesn't apply, because the funds that, we have, like for consolidated social service funding that we put money in, is with the city and Cunningham Township, which is a large pot that's for like not-for-profits for staffing and services to Urbana residents.
What about CDBG? Infrastructure fund?
Well, what problem is, not sure if we have any funds for that. And we didn't have any application process this year because of not knowing what our funding will be for next year, because the applications that we had, and that was not really for sewer stuff that we've ever done. For that, it's been roofs and windows and
Streetlights and curbs.
that is the separate, actually, that's like city, city infrastructure, which is, street lights and curbs and,
Get on their list.
so it would actually be, you probably would need to probably talk with Public Works, and City Council. And I can certainly, even if, I'd have to look at the regulations and see what all we cover, because I just, I'm not sure, but,
But we did do streetlights through CDB funding. Through
right,
something,
yeah,
right?
streetlights, but they're talking about like sewer stuff,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I would have to check, I don't have the regulations in front of me. I just know that previous projects we have done have been streetlights and sidewalks. So I'd have to look at the regulations that govern our community development block grant before I could say yay or nay for sure. I didn't know that anybody was coming, or I would have brought the regulations with me.
Yeah, perhaps we could put this on our list of things to do and do some, a little research on it.
Sure, I can
And-
certainly do research.
Yeah, and then bring it up on the agenda for next time, and maybe we can come up with a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And to expedite the situation being as it is, I mean, living with it day to day, to wait a month, is there a way that they can be contacted a little sooner than 30 days on?
If you have a business card with an email or phone number or something, we can certainly, get a hold of you after I check the regulations. I think, though, that most of the neighborhoods in the city, that's the way it is. I know in my neighborhood, and I think Connie said like in her neighborhood, there's a lot of, it's similar. It's not like unique to your neighborhood. I think throughout the city, that's how they do the sewers, so. But I can certainly check the regulations and see, usually our grants are not to individuals.
It's not an individual, it's a subdivision. I'm just here representing them.
Mhm.
Is there an association, does the subdivision have an association or an entity? Is there a neighborhood association for the subdivision or anything
We
like
have a
that?
crime watch, but as far as the association dealing with this type of thing, no.
Okay. The reason I ask that is just as Kelly was saying, usually we have an entity that the grants go to, which would be a neighborhood association or a community association or something like that. That's a named entity that we can work with. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, like We have, in the past, when we had funds, we gave to neighborhood, we had like a neighborhood organization grant for neighborhoods who had formed a group, and we were able to give them money to help build their capacity in newsletters and things like that, but,
But the sidewalks and the streetlight projects are just projects, they're
it
not
was, well,
associations.
well, part of it is you have to look, either CDBG has to be low and moderate,
Yeah.
it has to be in the target area, it has to be, you know, you either look at, you know, individual incomes, or you look at the area,
Mhm.
and the area has to be at least
Yeah, if it falls in our.
70%? Well, yeah, I mean, there's certain criteria under the regulations if you're looking at an area versus just one person, you know.
Isn't this really a public
Well,
works
it's a whole-
project?
Mhm.
And Bill Gray would know if it's in a
Mhm.
target area, if there's additional money that would be available. Otherwise, they have a schedule
A
of
schedule.
improvements
They
for
have capital,
city.
capital improvement.
Yeah, capital improvement, so maybe one of the things is if there are problems, maybe they need to know, oh, there's a problem area, and move it around on the agenda. But I would say Bill Gray would be the first person to ask.
I think that,
Oh, could you identify yourself,
Oh,
please? Thank you.
Sam Johnson, I'm with UCAP, the city of Nevada. 807 North Harvard Street in Nevada. I worked for the city about 33 years. So I was there when they was putting all these sewers in and everything, and it is a poor situation. You know, I didn't know, and I think what Robert Underwood is trying to do, get anybody involved that can help. They already been on the city, in fact, they still on them, but it's been a long time. All these sewers were put in back in the early 60s when they put in the neighborhood. We didn't have all the engineers that we have today. It was only like two, you know, and they went the cheap way. They just run one sewer on the north side, and everybody else went under the street. The contract was very bad because I was working for the city during that time. They didn't even seal most of the hookups. They didn't even put most of them in the top of the sewer. They run them in the side. And these problems have been going on ever since at least 66, 67. Because I lived at that end, you know, I bought a house up there too, you know. And even the ones on Roman Street, the hookups, that's the sewer that's way down. A lot of quicksand in there. And everybody on Roman Street that goes right direct into the main line, they have had to dig those up since they've been there, and that costs a lot of money. And that's in your own yard. Now here, they on the south side of the street, all the way from Ellis Drive to Bradley Street. And they got to go under the street, cross to the other side, and then get permission, which they're not going to be able to afford that kind of money. But there is a big problem, it's a big project, you know, and it's not the first time it's been mentioned, you know. I'm here tonight, you know, since this came up, I'm glad I am here because they sent letters to the church, said y'all was having this meeting for us to come and see what's going on and what y'all could do for us, you know. And I also know about this because I was one of the first in that neighborhood, and he was the first or second, you know. And there is a solution to, you go ahead and run new sewers in there, which today they use PCP pipes, you know, so you never have no problem no more. But all these pipes will have to be run on the south side of the streets, every street from Ellis Drive to Bradley, from Goodwin to Roman. But you don't have to cross Roman to go in there. That would save a lot of money because you're going to have just one sewer from every street on the north side with a main line. So you drop every line into every corner, Ellis Drive, Tremont, Eureka, and on until you get to there. That's about the cheapest way that you're going to get out of this sort of day, because then you try to go start digging out in the streets, cross, and that going to get into so much money, you know, it's going to be pathetic, you know. But to get everybody involved, we do need to come up to a solution, you know, because like you said, y'all probably pay for some sidewalks, you know, that all the sidewalks would definitely had to come up off to the south side, you know, if y'all pay for put them back in, you know. The lighters there, well, lighters had to come up, but they already there, but you had to pay to put them back in. The only thing I'm doing is trying to set the table where they at. Of course, I still have children live up there, 1405 North Roebuck, but I live on Tyler Street, you know. But here's a big problem. It's going to have to be solved because ain't nobody up there getting no younger, pretty much everybody retired up there now. And they just ain't got that kind of money to be paying. And the bad part about it, they hook T into the next door neighbor line and then run one line across the street. You know, so you got a problem. You got to tell your neighbor line and he ain't got no problem. But you got to fix it back. So, but like I say, the city didn't have the peoples like we have today to work for, especially the engineers, you know, to shoot those grates and whatnot. I was in the public works, you know, operator. I did everything, though. I even did some inspecting back in the day. But just going to show you that's how less help they had, and nobody really know. And it's not the first time this come up. It's been coming up about every 5 or 10 years, ever since back in the 60s, but nobody did nothing about it. But the only bad part about it, the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. If they had took care of it in the 70s and the 80s, it wouldn't cost near as the money it's going to cost today. And if you wait another 10 years, you think about what it's going to cost. So all I'm trying to do is to help them get everybody else involved, since over here, I didn't exactly know what all was going on that night, but on light.
Okay, that gives us a little more understanding about it.
Could I have one of your phone numbers that I can?
Yes, my phone number is area code 217-367-8215, and I'm Bishop King James Underwood.
Okay, I don't have an answer for you tonight, but I will check the regulations that govern our funds and see what I can come up with, and I can let you know.
And would you like to have a copy of this so you can have something to deal with?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other matters?
No, I don't know what else I'm supposed to be running tonight. Is it all right if we sit through the meeting?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I want to kind of see what's what.
Okay. Thank you, and, you know, this will get looked into. Okay, and then we will get back in touch with you.
Okay, thank you. You want me to be excused?
Oh, yes, you can leave whenever you feel like.
Stay or if you,
If you'd like city
I would
council
like to
going
stay.
on as well, we probably have their public comment, you know, and you can, whatever you'd like to do.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we have staff report. Kelly?
Okay, everyone received in your packet the staff briefing showing what all has happened since the last CD commission meeting. One thing of note, with HUD, we received a letter from them on November 29th asking for additional information, which we submitted to them within 30 days. It was due by the 29th, and we sent it on the 21st. We haven't heard back if information's been accepted or not. So we're hoping that what we sent them will answer their questions, and then we should get a letter saying everything is fine until we have to do our CAPER for this year, due next September. Then you can see all the things that staff have done regarding newsletters and looking at IDIS activities, attending meetings. On the last page, I wanted to note that we had our public hearings scheduled the 7th through the 10th at different sites throughout the target areas, and so I think we had less attendance than we have in the past, but staff attended at King School and other places throughout the city in the targeted areas. So, and then, of course, I sent an email out to everybody as well, and it also says here that Connie will be retiring after having been with the city for over 17 years, so her last day is on the 28th of January. Everyone is invited to come celebrate with Connie and Ron, her husband, on Friday in the city council chambers from 3:30 to 5. There'll be a reception and such. So that's the big news. And at this point, we don't have the funds to replace her at this time. So we are, all of us are learning different parts of her duty and then looking to see what happens when we get our next fiscal year money. So hopefully we'll get, we'll be able to look at a part-time person maybe. We just, for now, we're just kind of holding tight since we had been cut from last year. And we don't know what's going to happen after March when they're supposed to have the new budget chosen, and that, you know, and then from what I've seen, they're saying there may be more cuts. We just don't know. So right now we're going on the premise that we may get the same amount as next year as we did this year, but we'll know more after March probably. So, and that's pretty much the staff report. Any
Okay.
questions? or-
Questions?
Good. Since we have members of our community here, I'm looking under the home program, on the second page. If you could inform us what the senior repair program is about, emergency grant senior repair, and I noticed at the bottom you had 9 applications taken for the senior repair service projects. Could you explain what that's about and what it entails?
Yeah,
So maybe if
We
something's
actually
needed.
have some brochures that explain our home improvement program. These are, as you can see, there's the emergency grant, access grant, and senior repair service. These are with our CDBG funds for homeowners, based on income, but the amounts that we have are small amounts, anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. As you can see, like for the emergency grant, available if the repair is immediate, poses a threat to health and safety, repair, replacement of defective mechanical, etc. I think those are like replacing water heaters and
For
The
the emergency grant, like we've had 2 calls within the last few days about furnaces out. So we can usually replace a furnace. If it's a senior or person is disabled, we sometimes, our quickest is our senior repair, and sometimes we're able to get in and get the furnace up and running.
that's only $1,000.
Yeah, so it will not change out a furnace, but I had a call today, for example, a senior called and her, the lights, they must be motion sensor lights right outside of her garage are not working, and she's in an area that doesn't have street lights, and so we can do repairs to the house and to the lighting. Have someone else call, they have electrical problem, sewer backup usually, you know, so
Right, this
small
one,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, we have, for sewers, there's been a few where we have been able to clean out the sewer, or if there's been a break in the line from the house to the main, we can sometimes help, but usually the project is more than we can absorb. You know, like I'm thinking we can do up to $5,000, and some of them are more than that. so we're not able to proceed.
And it's not
So-
replacing the pipes in the
Right.
streets, it's
Just cleaning
Right.
it
just
up.
cleaning it out
Yes,
for the
cleaning out
homeowner.
for-
Well,
maybe- or maybe-
repairing the pipe from the house to this main.
Right, right.
But even
yeah.
most of those these days are gonna exceed $5,000.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
Unless the
think,
house is very close to the main.
yeah, I think the last big one we did, they had applied for a whole house rehabilitation, and with that, we were able to do more, but then that took up funds that would have maybe been used for roof or furnace or, you know,
So
so,
the whole house, we use home money for that. And the homeowners have to put in, depending on their income, they have to put in some money as well. And I think the total amount is like $25,000 for the house. And that's, we have the city inspectors go in and they inspect the whole house and come up with, you know, because the house needs to basically get up to code. So that's what that's for.
I was just thinking about that, and they did that, the sewer, I don't know if you'd call it repair or reinforcement on my street this year, where they put that tube in and blow it up.
Yeah,
Is that available for homeowners to go
Yeah.
from the house to the?
it is. Well, thing is, it's a repair though. So, for instance, the issue that they have, that may or may not resolve that. You need to have enough pipe to be the framework for it.
Yeah.
You know, and so very often, if you got a bigger issue than that, it doesn't matter, you aren't gonna do anything till you dig it up anyway, so, you know.
But like, because I think, if I understand their issue, they have to go underneath the street, so when they might have 10 houses, and if one of them has a problem, the repair cost is much greater because of having to go and dig up the street, right, and go a longer distance. So in a situation like that, it might be much cheaper to do like a preventative, like reinforcement, as opposed to dropping in a new line maybe. Like, how long does that last, or what, how does that work?
Well, they'll last a good amount of time. The difficulty is you need to have access to the pipe to get it in there
Yeah,
to inflate it. So if you can't, depending on how many, and a lot of those have some pretty ugly angles in them, if
Yeah.
they're like, some of the ones by me are like that too. You know, where you wonder how they actually got an angle, because it's more acute than 90 degrees.
Sure.
And so you can't get at it to get anything inside of it to do much. You know?
yeah, I was just thinking out loud. in
But
terms
yeah,
of, like,
I mean, if it could work, that might be a good preventative measure, but yeah, it's hard. I think what Connie's talking about with this, is like most of these programs, they're designed for a after an occurrence emergency repair. They're not preventive maintenance programs, they're not anything like that, and trying to get something in under that, it never fits. 'Cause
No,
there's
not
issue,
under these
yeah.
programs, but I mean, the streetlight project that happened on my street was a project that the neighbors, you know, people in that community said, we want streetlights, and so they went around the community and got petitions, and they went to the Public Works, and the Public Works said, well, we need funding for it, and they said, you can go to this commission and, you know, petition for a project, and, you know, that's just kind of how that whole process worked. And your project sounds like it would be a lot of dollars, so you might have to be talking to lots of people like you're doing.
Yeah.
But don't give up.
Too late to give up now.
The problem that we have up there is that we have trees there, and the roots is into the system, and it's on the other side of the street where we're having the problem. But the city says it's our problem because the way the city code reads is that the homeowner is responsible for the hookup from the house
To the main.
to the T or to the main. And so happened the main is on the other side of the street. In order for us to get to the main, then we got to tear up our yard, tear up the sidewalk, tear up the street. And when you get to the sidewalk, from the house to the sidewalk, is city right away. And then we left putting the whole bill, the homeowner is left footing the whole bill because the way the ordinance is written.
How does that work? Yeah, I mean, if you have to go tear up a city street to fix your sewer line, how do you even do that? Like, you gotta get permission to do that.
How does,
Moving
this-
from Public Works.
with all due respect, how does the city justify the ordinance?
Yeah.
Like I said,
That would
they
be a
have people
question
like y'all did
for city council.
today back in their time.
There are a lot of those kind of questions.
We're still working with them, trying to get some solution, but they're still holding on to the
Frustrating
ordinance.
problems.
Right, probably no one has opposed it or, really raised a serious concern about it.
Mhm.
So you doing that now may accomplish something.
Yeah, well, because the whole community is behind it because we all having problems.
Yeah.
It might be me today, but tomorrow it's the neighbor down the street.
Yeah.
That's the bad thing about it, like I say. Every so often, this problem rises up and the neighbors come out, but what happens, they don't follow it up. If they had started following up in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, it would already been done. But I think this group of neighbors, they done got old, they gonna follow it up all the way. It's gonna be very expensive, but they'll be following.
I'm a bit familiar with that area, but how many houses, you're saying between Goodwin and Romine, I guess Ellis and Bradley?
You
We're
got
talking-
everything from Ellis to the south side of Ellis to the south side of Bradley.
That's about 20, 30 homes.
And then you got everything from the west side of Romine to the east side of Goodwin.
Yeah, maybe
That's
at least
a
that.
lot of houses, a lot of houses,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, it's going to get looked into.
Every bit helps.
Okay, I guess we'll move on down the agenda, and next on the agenda is old business. We don't have anything listed under old business, but does anyone want to bring up any? If not, we'll move on to new business, which is the main item for this evening. An ordinance approving a second amendment to the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium Annual Action Plans, fiscal year 2011 and 12, and fiscal year 2012 and 13, parentheses, winter 2012, CDBG amendment. Okay.
Okay, basically, this amendment is, we were approached from our department head and other departments in the city to look at our CDBG funds to see if we had any possible carryover or unprogrammed funds or anything like that, in order to put those funds into a city project. And that would then free up city money for projects that are not, that are considered not CDBG eligible projects. So I met with our former previous grants management manager, and we looked over the last several years and found some property acquisition, demolition carryover funds, and some unprogrammed funds. And so what we are requesting is, what we have to do is, once we found the funds, then we looked at what projects do we have in our annual action plan that are eligible, that we can assist the city, so that it frees up their funds for other projects that they have. And in looking at the city infrastructure projects, the Census Tract 53 street lighting project, and this had to be in a project that has city funds or other, city funds, maybe TIF funds, whatever. Has to be a pretty big project so that we can put the funds in and then the city can use those for other things. So the Census Tract 53 street lighting, which is in our annual action plan approved by HUD. We are requesting that the carryover, the program be put into that, and because it's a change in the scope or there's a certain dollar figure, that's why we have to amend our annual action plan. If we looked at any new project that wasn't listed, we would also have to amend the consolidated plan, which would be another step that we would have to do. So it's a twofold amendment. One is that we are taking these funds, putting them into an approved Census Tract 53 street lighting project, and then that frees up city money for non-CDBG eligible projects. And we are also renaming a project, Neighborhood Sidewalks, which is listed, and renaming it Lenore Adams Fairlawn Multi-Use Path, and adding unprogrammed funds to that. So we had to have it put out for 30-day public comment and review. The city came to us in December after our last CD meeting. So on the second page, it shows what we're looking at as far as the funds unprogrammed, moving it into the city infrastructure. We already have amount of money in the city infrastructure. We're just increasing that and adding some unprogrammed funds, and then putting all of that into the Census Tract 53 streetlights, and then it frees up public works, capital improvement funds, city funds for other projects, whatever those projects may be. But we were requested by our department head and other departments to do that. And with the help of our previous manager, we were able to find some carryover. And then the neighborhood sidewalks, it shows that we're renaming it and adding a few unprogrammed funds into that. And these will both help with our timeliness, which is run every May 1st or 2nd. So these will help with our timeliness as well. So.
Just wondering, how did the name change come about for the sidewalk?
It was the name of a project that was on, I think it was on the, I'm not quite sure, it came from Public Works. They were the ones that had the name, and so we already had funds in place for neighborhood sidewalks, but it was very broad, very, very generic, and so that's why it's kind of a change in the scope of the work, and so because of that, we had to amend the annual action plan for the name change as well, so, yes.
What do you mean by path? Multi-use?
I wish I had brought the plans with me. It's between Fairlawn and Adams, Lenore, and in the neighborhood, and it's going to be more than just a sidewalk. I think bicyclists will be able to use it. There's going to be some landscaping, lights. It's on an area where there's like houses and there's like nothing, and people cross over that way anyway to get to Philo Road from the neighborhood. And so it's something that Public Works, I think, has looked at for a while. I'm not sure, again, it came from them, but they asked us as well, did we have anything? And we already had this in our annual action plan, and so the easiest thing to do was to rename it, and then we found a little bit of unprogrammed funds to include in that. So that's how it became the Lenore Adams Fairlawn Multi-Use Path.
Kelly, I was thinking, this was like a year or two ago, didn't we have a gentleman write us a letter and requested that sidewalk? I'm thinking he's written a couple of
Was it?
times.
Okay.
I'm thinking that's what initially,
Maybe,
I'm thinking.
it's possible, I don't remember.
Yeah.
If we got because we
yeah.
get letters
Right,
and comments.
but I'm thinking that that the whole thing maybe started, that he had brought this up, that he's
So-
seen people going through.
So
that
they
area,
started
so-
maybe even when John was the manager.
I think so. I think it's been a while,
So we would have
you know.
gotten, this
'Cause
letter.
it-
Thanks for
Yeah,
reminding me.
it takes a while to get it into there's an idea, and then they have to work it in with everything else, but I'm thinking it's in response to
Okay.
that citizen.
So apparently a citizen in the neighborhood sent a letter to us, to
Mhm.
maybe Public Works,
Mhm.
and that kind of started. Yes.
I have a lot of questions about this.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do my math roughly is saying that we're going to be taking about 175K in total dollars and displacing it from current city projects, which will allow that money to be displaced back into the general fund for the city? Is that, do I understand that correctly?
I don't know if I would use the word displaced, but yeah, we're putting CDBG funds, which it's already stated
No,
that
no,
we do,
yeah.
and into that project.
Yeah, which is
and then
going to
it-
displace money back
Then,
into.
well, it's going to take money out of that project. It's
Yeah.
like $1 million project, I think. So there's like city money, TIF money, our money. So we put put more money into that, then that frees up city money for projects, whatever. I don't know what those other projects are.
Exactly.
I'm not sure, but they're not eligible like for our funds that
Sure,
could go there.
Sure, so it's basically putting money back into the general fund. So I guess I would be very interested to know what that displaced money is going to be used for. Because essentially what we're doing here is we're taking money that has a purpose from the federal government, and we're repurposing it into a city project to allow the city to do what?
No, we're still doing this project.
You're saying unprogrammed funds.
Yes.
Well, our unprogrammed funds
Mhm.
are good, that's what's listed here, and they are going into this project as well. So they're still not going to be unprogrammed, they're going to be programmed
Sure,
into this Census Tract 53.
Sure, but
So our money is in a project. It's at a project that's approved in our annual action plan, Census Tract 53 street lighting. It's just, and we had 56,000 that we had set aside. We have found that we actually have more, so we're just basically adding more money to this project.
We're gonna, instead of funding it at like some percent, we're plussing that percent. We're gonna fund a larger percentage of this project. So I understand that makes complete sense,
Mhm.
but what my question is why are we doing this, and what does the city need the money for what other purpose? That's a very fair question.
Mhm.
Yeah, they had to know what they wanted it for to initiate
Right.
this whole action.
I'm sure, but we're not in charge of those city
Right.
funds.
Yeah.
That's
But
not
they
our,
didn't
that's
say.
not
Sure.
what we're doing is making sure that the
So-
funds that we have are going into an approved project in our annual
There's-
action plan.
There's no
So-
problem, I have no doubt that it's approved. I mean, I could get into the nuances. I know that like there's
Mhm.
some sort of matching
It's
in this and that, so I
Page
don't know if like.
34, it clearly states city infrastructure. It's also in the capital improvement plan, it lists the reason why we put funds into the city infrastructure, our CDBG, is that we then can get our match from Public Works or from the city
Mhm.
for our home program, which is required for the regulations. So we put CDBG, that's why we have put CDBG into the streetlights to, and that
Match.
way we're helping the city and then they help us by giving us the match for the home
Sure,
program.
sure.
So,
But yeah, that question is still looming of what is the city needing the 175K for, that they want to spend it on what? Because this money has regulations. You can only spend it in certain ways in certain neighborhoods and stuff like that.
which we are doing.
So what we're doing is we're going to overload one project to displace money out of the city had already committed money to this project. We're gonna displace that money out so the city can do what? That's the question. And if,
But
without
that's-
having that information here, I can't
Okay.
support this.
But that's
Well,
city general
make-
funds,
make
and
your
that's, we're
approval
not in
contingent.
charge of those.
No, I'm not.
We are making
No.
sure that
No.
our money is following the regulations and that it is with an approved, AAP project approved by HUD.
No doubt.
You know,
It's doing
and
that.
so, whatever, so we are doing this we're just basically putting more funds into this
Yeah.
project. So, whatever the city decides to do with that portion, that's up to the city.
Exactly.
We don't monitor that, we don't regulate
Yeah,
that.
I would beg to disagree that it's up to the city strictly. I have the same concern with this. I understand that I don't disagree at all, it's going into an approved project, but this is this year's version of the shell game that was last year and the year before. This is indeed an approved project. It comes under the neighborhood sidewalk project, comes under the same classification as any other shovel-ready project that already has the approval, so it doesn't have a timeline that slows it down. It's a place to put money. Now, the property acquisition fund was also an approved project. There were reasons to put the money into that fund
Exactly.
that were discussed at length. There was a decision made to put the money there and hold it in reserves. And once you pull it out of there, you had this amount of funds being used for a CDBG project, you had this amount of funds, now you've moved it from here to here, and the other came out the other end.
That's right.
This is the current version of the Windsor Road extension, in which there were approved funds by Urbana, Champaign County, all of which got moved by money from Washington, and then money moved back into the general funds, and I've never gotten an answer from anybody on what it was spent for, other than keeping the budget going that was falling short. This, to me, is a way to do this. This creates, to me, the same sort of problem that we've argued about in this commission for the 16 years that I've been on it, of taking projects that would normally be done out of public work funds, etc., and in one particular neighborhood, paying for them out of CBDG funds, where in other neighborhoods are paid for out of public works funds. It's not a full use to me of what these funds were intended for. The big fixes are gone, and this year's scramble, whether it's in Springfield or apparently Urbana, is for the small fixes.
Mhm.
And the cupboard's getting pretty bare. We're down to crumbs.
Yep.
And my worry is that that means next year, when we're talking about property acquisition and all the things that we should be doing, we're not gonna have those reserves to do it. That's what they're put there for.
I agree
So,
100%.
I have the same problem. This going to the city to spend it on whatever they intend to spend it on is not a sufficient answer. for
Yeah,
me.
and I mean, for them to come down here and ask you guys to do that, but to not have a justification of what they need to spend the money on, I think is, they're putting you in a hard spot. I think that's an unfair
I
position
agree.
to put you in, to come to us and say, let's do this and this and this, and of course, we're gonna ask you the obvious question.
And then you're put in a position of not having an answer for it, which is not a comfortable place to be.
Yeah,
I feel sorry
so
for you.
it's not against you
Yeah.
personally, but I can't support this.
Kelly, let me ask you a question about the total budget for this project, which maybe you don't know. We're assuming that we're putting a set amount of money in, but is it displacing anything, or are we just short to accomplish these kind of improvements in that neighborhood? It's not like they had, $24,263 in there and we're replacing it. It's probably, I don't see that we're actually going to end up with extra money to be reallocated.
No, actually, we are replacing it. The amount of funds that are in this is the project that has been approved, funds are allocated, they can't be spent on anything else. All you can do is replace some of them with some money from somewhere else and spend that.
That's right.
Elsewhere.
I mean,
It's a
she
straight
basically
pass.
said that what they're trying to do is free up city money that has been committed.
They're committed to this, so that every
Okay,
dollar
so
we
we're
put
on-
in decommits a dollar that the city had committed,
Yep.
which they now can
Okay,
spend
so
on
there were
something
already
else.
dollars committed
Yeah.
there now.
And because they can't,
Okay.
they can't come over here and say, we'd like to take this $175K and spend it on.
Yeah, I understand that part of it.
Could I say something on that? Since you brought up about the roundabout at Windsor Road and how they pull that money back to go somewhere else. Okay, I was thinking they could pull the money back that they got for this road ditch from us, Ray Street to Broadway, that they're gonna spend $2 million to have a 1-minute park on. Why couldn't they set that back and pull that back and put, it wouldn't cost $2 million to do Dr. Ellis addition, sewer. Just a thought.
Definitely a question.
That's the city and public works.
Yep. It's
It's the city.
now you're thinking, or at least you're wanting to play the game too.
Okay. Did you have any further comments on that, Kelly? Or is it time for us to take a vote? Is there a time frame for getting this done? That the city wants it done by?
Well, definitely the Lenore Adams Fair Lawn, that project, this is all then going to council next Monday night. The budget amendment, the AAP amendment's going to council all next Monday night. So the plan is to begin that project fairly soon after that, I think. Maybe come March to do that. As far as the street light, they're still working on, I think, the bid packet and all that.
Actually, I was talking about is, does the city have a time frame for spending the freed up money? Not the freed up money. They have something, they have a time frame for that.
Yeah, they do, I think.
Okay, so
I
they're
believe
kind of
that
rushing.
there's a couple of different things that they're going to be using it for.
Mhm.
However, I'm not sure if I can really say what those are in public, so.
Okay, well, that's, I understand.
So, afterwards,
Okay.
but, as of right now, so it's not gonna be just willy-nilly spent. There are some possible where the funds will go. That's all I can say.
Okay. Okay, does the commission need any further clarification on this?
I guess I would just add as clarification that one thing we should keep in mind is projects that are listed here are not projects that won't be done if this money isn't shifted.
Right.
These projects will be done. Whatever it is going to be shifted to are the projects that won't be done.
Right.
That we don't know what those projects are.
The Lenore Adams Fair Lawn is completely CDBG. There is no city funds in that at all. So if it's not approved, those definitely won't get done because the city won't put any city money into that. It's that we're renaming it, but it's all CDBG for this particular project.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine.
It's not a priority project that I can see. No.
And that, Lenore, when was that initiated? I mean, originally?
well, Connie said that maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, we got a letter from the neighborhood. This would have been before I was the manager. And then it would have went probably to Public Works, and there would have been discussion. They may have had public hearings. I'm not sure what Public Works did with it. But again, we do put funds into city infrastructure, small projects, and that then we are able to get our match for the home program. So it's, they help us and we help, in targeted neighborhoods in the city. Because we look at our target map and that's where our funds go to help low and moderate income families and households in the city.
So where is that again? It's a.
Location,
The what?
location.
It goes over to Philo, you said?
Or which one?
Actually, in our last, or in the current annual action plan, here's the letter. This is, he's written before, and I think,
Oh,
I
okay.
think, the LMAC group, the Lenore
Neighborhood Action Group
has
Committee?
been-
Okay.
I think, I'm not sure if that's specifically their.
I think they've contacted Public Works.
Yeah.
That's who's mostly gotten the contact, and then Public Works contacts us, since we have, like I said, we've set aside funds to help city infrastructure projects. I'm sorry,
Where is
where
it?
was it that you,
So where is it?
which one? The
Lenore?
Lenore?
Yeah.
Adams Fairlawn?
Goes to Philo, you said?
Multi-use path.
It's
Multi-use
land that
path.
people use, I believe, that they go from Philo
With
Road, they
what?
get to Philo Road,
Uh-huh.
I think.
It's bike path.
I'm wondering if it, do you think it's right next to the Dollar General or whatever that
Family
new
Dollar?
Family Dollar? Is
It
that
might be back
where the
there.
old railroad track used to be? Would take you over to Scottswood Manor, I'm thinking?
That may be the.
I'm not sure. I don't,
I did not.
I'm guessing that that's what it is.
It's a shortcut.
Yeah,
Money.
And they're,
So
they're
people are
putting
cutting
multi-use
grass.
They're gonna have lights.
No, I know that. They've been complaining about that for a long time.
I know.
But they don't have a good way to get over to Philo Road, and there's a lot of people who walk and they don't have good bus service.
Ma'am, if I may say, I mean, it's been said that, you know, it's, the issue with the sewers, the mains, has been brought up through the years since the 70s and 80s, and if I heard right, there are several neighborhoods with this situation. I mean, it seems that the aesthetics, you know, with this path, I'm sure it's a good cause for some, for most, and it might be a safety issue. I'm sure there's some good in it. But if we're talking about infrastructure, you know, the priority, the importance of, you know, it seems just a little imbalanced when you consider the quality of life versus something that could be put off for the sake of, you know.
Well, again, I would have to check
Right?
the regulations regarding.
Okay. I mean, that's something that would affect more than just one neighborhood in the city. It might affect a number of neighborhoods before it's over. Like the gentleman said, I mean, if something had been done a few decades ago, it could have been the start of something throughout the city, not just, you know.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, we have three options on this issue. We can forward the ordinance approving the CDBG amendment to the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium fiscal year 2011 to 2012 and 2012 to 2013 annual action plans to the City Council with a recommendation for approval. Or we can suggest, our second choice is to suggest changes to this ordinance. And the third option is to not approve the ordinance. Now, the staff recommendation is to approve the ordinance. Under fiscal impacts, it says there will be no fiscal impact to the city budget as the CDBG funds were previously allocated in fiscal year 2011-2012 AAP, as shown as carryover in the fiscal year 2012-2013 AAP. Changes to the CDBG budget will assist with the timeliness in spending CDBG funds as required by HUD, and will provide more funds to the city infrastructure projects already included in the annual action plans for fiscal year 2012 and fiscal year 2012-2013. Okay, and really, anyway, we've heard the earlier discussion that it will free up money for the city itself, so the city can use its own funds for something other than CDBG projects. So with that, what is the pleasure of the commission? Do I hear a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we do not recommend approval, and I would also like to attach to that, I think that your department head, or any of the other department heads that asked you to do this, should have been here tonight to explain what they wanted to do with the displaced money, and I think they put you in a hard spot.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to not approve the ordinance. Is there any further discussion?
As a further discussion point, I would like to note that the fiscal impact note, as far as I'm concerned on this, is not correct. There would be no fiscal impact to the city budget as long as this was recommended to be approved. Because it is under CDBG and it would not affect the city budget. If this is recommended not to be approved, there would obviously be about $175,000 adjustment to the city budget. So while this is correct, and again, I'm not reflecting on staff for presenting it this way because this is the way it reads, it is not entirely correct.
That's right.
Okay, any further comment? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it. And the motion carries, which is not to forward the ordinance. Okay. Next on the agenda is adjournment. Do we have any other issues that we'd like to discuss prior to adjournment? Hearing none, meeting is now adjourned.
I would just like